Okay, in this video we're going to learn about four things: CSS positioning, slicing Photoshop mockups, Chrome DevTools, and building a header in HTML and CSS. This is the header we're going to build. We're going to use this Photoshop mockup. You can download this Photoshop layout in the blog post. You can get the link to the blog post in the YouTube description. Okay. Start by creating a folder on your desktop called Flowers. In your text editor, create two blank files, Flowers HTML and Style CSS, and save them both in your Flowers folder. Open the mockup in Photoshop. To zoom in Photoshop, do plus or minus and Control. In Mac, that would be Command. To pan, hold down spacebar and click and drag your mouse. To get your slice tool, hit C and then hold Shift and tap C. When you have the knife with no arrow, click and drag a border around the logo. The knife with the arrow automatically comes up. Double click inside the logo, call it logo, and hit enter. To get the image, do File, Save for Web. This box takes a minute to load. Okay, I'm going to double click inside my logo and the dialog box comes up. I'm going to hit Escape, hit JPEG here, use 80%, and hit Save. I'm going to save on my desktop and I'm going to do Selected Slices. I'm going to hit Save. That saves a folder on my desktop with the image. I'm going to copy that folder and paste it inside the Flowers folder. Now let's add some starter markup to my Flowers HTML. Now let's add the image, the logo. We'll use an image source tag with an alt tag for screen readers and blind folks. Now if I refresh, if I go to Chrome and open my Flowers HTML, I have my logo. Let us add some style for the logo. If we look at the mockup, this area here is centered horizontally within the larger area. Also, the image is to the left a little bit, the logo. So let's talk about positioning real quick. I'm going to use position relative on the logo. I'll do something like this. I specify the logo of the ID of logo. Excuse me. Actually, real quick. I'm going to add a header div around this, and then I'm going to add an ID of logo here. This is necessary to target our styles with the logo. So I add an ID logo here, and then I use # logo. If I had done class equals logo, I would do period logo. So ID logo, position relative, left 100. So when you use position relative, and then you specify a direction and a distance, it'll do something like this. It'll push it from the direction you specify in the distance you specify. So that's position relative. It'll push from the direction you're specifying, not to the direction. That's kind of a weird thing you just have to remember. Okay, let's add some more markup here. Let's add these navs. Oops, where's the first one? I broke it, did it? There it is. Okay, so I'm gonna mark up. I'm gonna mark up those two navs. We'll use bullet list, unordered list, because that's just what we do in web design. It creates a sort of semantic list of navigation elements. Here we have a UL with an ID, and then a list element with a link, and a bunch of list elements and a link. We're doing that for the main nav and that social nav with the social icons. Now let's add some we're going to need a header inner. So if we look at the mockup, we need to use a header inner around this area with the content and position it horizontally. So I add a header inner, and now I'm going to add some styles to that header. Okay, this makes sense. With 1008 pixels, that just means it's going to go from about here to here. But why use margin 0 auto? Well, we know what margin is. It's something like this. We're used to this. Top, right, bottom, left. Okay, that'll put different margins on all four sides. But did you know that we can specify all this in one line using a margin shorthand like this? 10, 15, 20, 25, 10, 15, 20, 25. So when you use four numbers, the first number is top, second number is right, third number is bottom, fourth number is left. We can use three numbers if we want. In that case, the first is top and bottom. Pardon me, scratch that. The first is top, second is left and right, and the third is bottom. If we only use two numbers, first is top and bottom, second is left and right. If we only use one number, that's just the same margin on all four sides. Okay, so this means 0 auto. That means 0 on the top and bottom, and auto on the left and right. Well, what's auto? Auto just means, well, as long as you specify a fixed width on a container and you use margin auto, it'll try to center it within that element, or it'll try to center it horizontally. So that's great. That's exactly what we need. Let's add some styles for those two navs. We're going to use a different kind of positioning on the navs. We talked about position relative with the logo. We're going to talk about position absolute with the navs. Now, for position absolute to work, there's one weird rule, and that's that the parent element has to have position relative or absolute. So when we're talking about these navs, the parent element, which would be header inner right now, needs to have position absolute or relative, or position absolute just won't work even if we specify it in this style sheet. So now that we have position relative, we go ahead and we add position absolute, and you can specify distance. With both relative and absolute, you can specify an x and a y, or just a y distance. It's all good. Now, position absolute is pretty different than position relative. Position relative pushes from the direction you specify in the direction you specify. And position absolute will do two things. It'll push all the way in the direction you specify, and then it'll push in the opposite direction to the distance you mentioned. So that's kind of weird, but let's just look at it real fast. So we have these two bullet lists now, which are pretty far on the right side. This one's almost all the way over, and this one is right, but then it comes back a little bit. Well, that's because we specified right 181 and then right 1 for this one. So that's position absolute. Now we have one more positioning thing we'll get into in a minute, and that's floats. Let's continue to style these guys, and we're going to float these LIs left. I'm sorry, first, let's get rid of those bullets. We have these weird bullets on them. So on the LIs, let's just do list style type none. List style type is like, hey, I'm going to mess with the list type. When we specify none, it just gets rid of the bullets. Now let's float those guys left. When you float something left, it'll push it left as far as it can. So a lot of times you'll see nav items floated left or right like that to put them in a horizontal line, because bullets are vertical by default. We'll get more into float soon. Let's continue to style these. So now that we've styled the UL and the LIs, now we're going to style the A's, the links inside them. So we're going to give them Arial, we're going to make them black, and we're going to get rid of those underlines. And then on hover, that's what A : hover does. It says on the hover of the link, get rid of the underline. Pardon me. We're saying on the link, get rid of the underline, and then on hover, put the underline back so the user knows it's a link. So we got all that now, Arial, black, no underline, and on hover, the underline comes back. Very interesting. Okay, we're going to add more styles to our main nav. We're going to tweak the font size. We're going to add a little horizontal margin on each link. And we're going to make them uppercase. Text transform uppercase. When I refresh, it looks very nice. Now the only thing now we need to do is make these images, but I think we do that a little later. Now we're going to do that now. Okay, so how do you make a word into an image? Well, first thing you want to do is hide the word. Okay, so we're going to do display block, overflow hidden, white space no wrap, text indent 200%. These are just things you just need to memorize. It's just a weird way to hide text when you want to use a background image instead. So if I save that and then refresh, those are gone. Each of those now has the text has been pushed out of the block and the text is hidden. It's just a weird trick we use in building websites. Okay, now let's style the background images themselves. So we need to add IDs for Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram here. So there are our IDs, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now we can go ahead and style like this. So we're going to give each of them a fixed width and height, and then we'll throw a background image on them. Oops, I didn't cut those background images out. So I'm going to delete this guy, and then I'm going to zoom in, pan over to my social nav. I'm going to slice these guys. Slice and dice them. When you have that X-Acto knife with the arrow, you can copy and then paste using Control C. Ooh, that's actually not what we want at all. I'm going to undo that. Control Shift Z. Alt Shift Z, I think. So much fail. Alt Control Z is undo. And I'm just going to hit C and get my select tool back. And just make that a nice little selection. Okay, something like that will do. Now let's see what we want to name them. We just want to name them Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm going to get my knife with the arrow by doing Shift C. I double click in there and just call it Facebook. Hit enter. I'm going to double click here, write Twitter. Hit enter. I'm going to pan over. I'm going to double click that guy and hit Instagram. Hit enter. Now I'm going to hold shift and double click all of them so they're all highlighted. And then I'm going to escape when those dialogues come up. Now I'm going to do save for web. Let's see if they're all highlighted. They are not. I'm going to hold shift and double click these guys. When the dialogues come up, I'm going to hit escape. Hold shift, double click him. Hit escape. Now I'm going to save these as JPEGs at 80%. I hit save. Do selected slices. I'm going to open up my images folder on the desktop I'm going to copy those 3 images. Then I'm going to paste those inside my images folder in my flowers directory. Okay. Now, if I refresh this, beautiful images. Okay. Let's see if that's everything. I do believe that's good for this lesson.